La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Benvenuti everyone to La Lanterna podcast. This is episode 39. This is Fabrizio here from Toronto, and we have...
Hey, Fabry, we've got Matt coming at you live from New York. It's Wednesday night.
Is that your real accent then?
Yeah, that's how I always talk. Yeah, all the time, every day.
That's all right. So we're here to talk about match day, well, both, but match day 25, essentially, that's where we're starting for.
Yes.
Match day 25, Serie B, round two, second leg, whatever you want to call it. And that means, what is this then? Seventh match of round of second leg.
Mm-hmm.
That was Modena, Genoa. So Genoa at Modena.
Yep.
If I recall, I have listened to our podcast. I usually try to listen to them just to remember what I say and also analyze whatever we have said after the fact. But I was the only one that was pumped. Yet both you and Matteo were more for the tie, and you actually guys got it more on the dot than I was. Was I too positive? I think I'm going to start the analysis by saying, when we get too cocky, I'm going to say this, then we pay for it.
Yep. I don't know if you necessarily were too confident. I think it's just like a difficult season, like it's a game against a team. Before the match, they were already in a similar position, I think, than where they are now. They might not have been 8th, maybe they were 10th or whatever. I can't remember where they were, but they were still in a good position in the table. They've given a lot of teams a tough go, and you just never know. I mean, we had a win that really felt good the week before this one, and sometimes, you kind of get a little. It's not like a bump in the road, but you kind of have a little bit of an obstacle. And this game, for some reason, to me, felt like it could be an obstacle, and it turned out to be one. But, it was a tough one.
Now, if you remember, what Matteo was saying is that Modena is one of those weird teams, tough teams, that even though they are currently sitting on the 8th spot, so it's not that they're like at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
They were kind of like a yo-yo in the season, but I think with their coach and play and so on, they have a stable. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they qualified for the playoffs at the bottom, not. Like at the 8th or 7th spot. I wouldn't be surprised. But let's hear from Matteo his comments about the match.
Ciao a tutti gli amici di La Lanterna. Hi to all Lanterna friends. What to say about the last game, Modena-Genoa? We can summarize by saying a golden point for an extremely naive Genoa against one of the toughest, dirtiest team of Serie B, managed by a very knowledgeable, probably one of the most knowledgeable most experienced manager in the whole Serie B, Attilio Tesser, which, he gave a lesson, a lecture to the new guy, to the young guy, Gilardino. Genoa once again showed few weaknesses. One was we cannot take advantage of an early lead. No counter-attack ability, probably due to the type of player that we have. Aramu is the big example. Another weakness is still this mystery about, Coda and Aramu. They can be a factor in our Serie A hunt or not. Strength that this game showed. The team kept calm in the most difficult moment when we found ourselves down to 1. And our skill player, for instance, Gudmundsson, due to him to the to his ability to have one player booked and one player sent off. So then we were able to recover the point. And another strength that this game showed, our defender goal scoring ability, which can be a big factor in the Serie A. What I think is a lesson learned, despite it's still a mystery, despite we still do not understand if it can be a real factor, but Koda should always be a starter. Puskás clearly is not, cannot be in the starting 11. Albert always on the pitch, and God keep Badel healthy. Even if today he made a little mistake on the first goal, but it is one of the 2-3 players that we cannot give up. Bye everybody. Forza Genoa.
Thank you, Matteo, for your comments and point of view regarding the match. So to your point, overconfidence, and also getting to Matteo's point of last episode, those iffy teams, those uncomfortable teams that, especially when you're playing in their ground, they play that dirty, as he was saying, if I remember well, that type of dirty football where it seems that Genoa suffers the most, actually. So when you get teams like Palermo that play that quote unquote real football, you get the real quality of Genoa out. There can be matches, of course, that we can lose or tie, but our quality, I guess, comes out. While when we have teams like your Ascoli per se, your Modena per se, and whatnot, those are the ones that are just like nerve-wracking. And actually, before I continue with that, was there anything you wanted to add?
I mean, I think you're spot on those points. And the thing that's kind of like, I don't know if you thought about this in the off season as we were making some of our signings, but I kind of thought that we were gearing the team up to kind of be more precisely the team you were talking about and facing the Ascolis in the Modenas of Serie B, which is to have players like Strootman. Ilsanker hasn't really featured very often, but like knowing how he had played in the Bundesliga, even thinking about, Storaro is a little bit more of kind of like a air quotes like an engine type of a player, but I would have thought that with our team we might be better positioned to kind of scrap with teams like that and maybe kind of equally the physical sides that kind of dig their heels in. But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that though too, because I wouldn't say that like our stronger players are somehow softer, but I do think that we sometimes, and I agree with you, when we have teams that kind of want to muck about the game a little bit, it definitely makes it a little bit harder for us to kind of hit that second gear. And we saw some great plays in this match against Modena, don't get me wrong, but I do understand that kind of that view of the team.
Well, I was listening to different podcasts or different specials in Genova, so in Italian and whatnot. I'm starting to lean more towards this analysis. Not first of all, the typical Genovese fan, the Mugugno, they're all complaining, yet we're still in second spot. So I guess in a way, the first thing that we're suffering mostly from a fan base perspective is the fact of seeing Frosinone 12 now points, if I'm not mistaken. Well, compare in hoping or wishing or thinking or having expected that we were the one that were supposed to have that or be there, right? Yeah. Not to mention the fact of the change in on the bench. So that definitely has made certain things a little bit more different. Meaning that while Gilardino is doing an excellent job and we're all praising him and so on, we need also to remember that team has not been built around his, his style of play. So he is more so adapting to what is there. One could say, well, what about January, the January market and so on? Well, I think it could have been, should have been, would have been a little bit more. The expectation from everybody would have been like great names and so on. But first of all, let's not forget that we are in City B.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that it's January, so the availability of certain players and or the quality of certain players that are going to be freed, therefore sold or on loan and whatnot from the different teams are going to be a lot more limited compared to a summer market.
Hmm.
And you also have to think of, okay, am I buying already someone for Serie A? Am I buying someone for Serie B? If I buy someone from Serie A, well, they might not even want to drop down. If they're coming from Serie A, they might not be adapted or perfect or well spot on for the Serie B, type of approach that we're taking because we want to go straight to Serie A.
Right.
And vice versa. Do you want to continue to take and buy Serie B players when your aim is to go again on the top flight?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that easy. It wasn't that easy. I can see people complaining about that. I can see why mostly, but I can also see the other hand where we're still on the paper, the biggest, the strongest, the most important, team per se, like the squad with respect to all of the players compared to all the other ones. And not to forget, Frosinone last year, it's the third year of Grosso. Last year, Frosinone didn't even catch the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just, look, I understand the frustration about it and the expectation part of it. But at this point, I think you just have to let that one, you have to focus differently on the team. Frosinone are where they are, and they are in an amazing place. I mean, the one thing about, I'm sure this is a frustration, and I share it. Frosinone dropped points this match week. We had an opportunity to at least make a better kind of dent at what that point total is. You consider that we could have been, within 10 points. I think it's still kind of silly to say, oh, well, we could have been within 10 points because we're saying we could have been within 10 points. So it's still a fairly big gap, to be honest with you. And I don't know. I mean, this one for me, I'm not sure I would exactly call this a quote unquote like Mugugno with driving match. I didn't think that there was a lot we did terribly wrong. It was a difficult match. Statistically, like Genoa looked pretty good on paper versus Modena in terms of like how kind of we had put key chances, our possession, our shots, all of those things. Watching the match, I have to say, it didn't feel like it was a real dominant Genoa performance. It didn't feel like we were completely on top of it. Obviously, with the red cards and things changed. But I think like it was kind of like you described before, it was a little bit of a scrappy match. I thought Modena had some good opportunities earlier in the game, although, you could see the difference in quality between their team and ours. And I also, if I'm completely honest about it, I think a couple of the goals that Modena had, one was the result of a really pretty well taken free kick that put pressure on our team, and it ultimately resulted in an own goal. And the other was, honestly, I think kind of a fluke. It was a very kind of unusual type of a play, and it looked like a soft goal when you watched it in real time, but seeing some of the replay, it for me felt like we were slightly unlucky to have that one scored against us. And so, when you consider, obviously they go down a man, but really we had an opportunity to get that equalizer beforehand with Goodmanson. I don't know, like it was a difficult match, and I think we have to be somewhat rueful of the fact that they had gone down to 10 men with about 30 minutes to go, and we didn't really end, I guess more like 20 minutes to go, and we didn't really end the match with more than a point. But in a way, I also think the draw is somewhat of a fair result in this match, notwithstanding the statistics, because I think that's kind of how the match ultimately played out. Modena were kind of happy to give us some of that opportunity and space. And I wouldn't say that we were completely dire of creative ability, but I wouldn't also say we were absolutely just, shaking the crossbar every 5 minutes and just getting completely unlucky either. So
No, and that was the second part of the analysis I wanted to talk to you about with respect to the fact that everybody's hoping for this, what we say in Italian, goleada, like the 2-3-4-0 type of thing that you can see that we've seen with other teams like Bari, like in Regina at times and so on.
yeah.
But what I'm trying to get at essentially is that with this team, with these type of players, we're going to continue to see what we've seen so far. So we have to totally scratch the possibility of winning with a large advantage, unless for fortunate type of instances and whatnot. I think the team will always play with a little, small droplets of goals here and there. It'll be probably one of the few teams that'll be in the top 5 with so few goals, and I think we just have to live with it. The thing that we need to focus mostly is on closing the matches as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And or mostly being that we know, because of the different reasons that we mentioned before, and perhaps even more to that, we're not going to have a lot of goals, as I said before, but we have to focus essentially on not taking them. So for that lucky goal that they had made that you just mentioned, plus that unluckiness from the own goal from Puskas and whatnot, that's the only time when we're seeing certain goals, like that fluke from the defender, and which was like never happens essentially. We're essentially, even though if you look at the goals, the goals that we've conceded, we are the second best after Frosinone. But at the same time, I'm sure if I say that between the two defenses, ours seems a lot stronger, even though on the paper we have a little bit more goals conceded compared to them. I think they're like 14 and we're
They're
19.
14. Yeah. And the next best is I think quite a ways from us. There's several teams on 26 goals conceded, or actually a couple on 26 goals conceded, a few more on 27 conceded. And it's one of the strongest points of our team. In every single match we're in, we know we're going to obviously be in the match. We're expecting to be more than just be in the match, but to win it. But I think you rightly say it's probably one of the best defensive squads, if not the best, in
Serie B.
Yeah.
So having said that, so the result was 2-2.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to do a little bit of a recap of what we've seen in the match, how would you describe that?
So, it started, I thought, reasonably well enough for us. I felt like the first handful of minutes was fairly even, and then we had kind of a wonderful moment early on in the game, which I think gave us all some confidence. And I could also understand why maybe this is why some fans are really feeling disappointed, because we go basically 6 minutes into the match. I think Aramu has a cross, and he plays this kind of tricky ball that I think if this happened against us, we'd be howling at the keeper a little bit. But it was kind of a clever ball too, because it seemed like maybe it would come out farther than it did, and really kind of hung around by the goalpost. And Dragoshin was really good about.
Oh, that was from the corner.
It was from the corner, yeah. About capitalizing on that play, and he kind of almost beat the keeper's hands to the ball, and it was a near post goal. It was, from a keeper's perspective, I think it's a pretty poor goal to concede, because really you should get to that ball first. But the fact that like the ball was cleverly, it seemed a little bit like it was a difficult ball to read, and that Dragoshin was able to pounce on that and make it count was fantastic. And obviously we start the game really early on, 1-0 up. I think in that there's kind of this period in between then. It was fairly even, I thought. I thought there were some opportunities for Modena. They didn't really have very many good shots on goal.
No, at the end, I have on my stats, I only have one for the entire match.
Which
and
is
yeah.
Right.
That's essentially what exactly the goal they made.
Their goal, yeah. And so like there were some times I think they were on our other side. There was a little bit of a dust up at one moment when one of the guys fell in the penalty box and everything, but
yeah, because being the second one was an own goal, that's not considered shot on goal, right?
No, right. So overall seeming like we're in control of this match. We had a couple of things happen. Bocci, who was, not necessarily a surprise start, but it was good to see him. Fortunately, picked up, I think it looked like a pretty bad injury around the 38th minute or so, I want to say, in the match. And I know Crescito came on to replace him. I'm not sure if you've seen much in terms of his status or his progress, but he was pretty badly limping off of the pitch as he was.
Yeah, I actually heard from I think it was like today or yesterday, from the infirmary, and essentially after the medical exams, he has a muscle injury and he's going to be out for 5 weeks. So that's sad to hear. Hopefully, I'm hoping for his prompt recoup as fast as he can. The good thing is probably in a month, 2 months time, we're going to have a whole bunch of players available. Knock on wood that no one else gets injured, right?
No kidding.
But no, that was interesting because I'm happy to see the Christmas tree, essentially the 4-3-2-1 with Bocci to the left, Sabelli to the right in his natural position. The typical two mids in the back were obviously Dragusin and Bani.
Yep.
Which are actually the 2 goal scorers, funny enough.
I know.
Then in the midfield, we had Frendrup to the left, Badel to the center, and Sturaro to the right. Then the 2 wingers, or they're not technically wingers, they're both, I guess, sort of like a trequartisti to wingers. I don't even know how to call them.
Yeah.
But you have Aramu to the right and Gudmundsson to the left. And then you also... The other surprise, to your point, other than Bocci, was seeing Puskás as in the starting 11.
Yep.
So if Bocci, as you said, unfortunately got this bad injury in the first half, and I think going back to what you mentioned, it happened around the 40th minute of the first half.
Yep.
So then Criscito comes in. And I have a funny feeling that we kind of changed our lineup at that point, the module.
It seemed a little bit like that. I mean, it was hard for me to read exactly how we were playing, whether it was more of like a 4-3-3 or what was going on when he had kind of come in. But I'm with you that it did seem like the shape had changed somewhat. And I would be a little bit remiss too to not kind of touch on, just before this injury, the goal that Modena did score to level the match. So it was kind of another strange play. If I'm not mistaken, it actually initially started from a throw in, perhaps, or a stoppage in play, and a ball was kind of lifted into the box, and it was just this very strange set of things that ended up happening. Watching it in real time, I almost thought there was a penalty shout from Modena, and you were kind of looking around like what happened, and then all of a sudden the ball's in the back of the net. But basically, I can't remember who it was on Modena that had the ball. He kind of like went for goal, but either he slipped or something happened, and he just kind of fell down. And we were already in a little bit of defensively misorganization before this had happened, because you have kind of this aerial ball coming into the box, and Bonnie was going to kind of cover one way, and he readjusted and came up towards this player. And so you saw some of that kind of, not indecisiveness, but you saw him have to kind of react and change course. But when he does come up and try to make pressure on the ball, this guy basically falls down, and Bonnie's momentum's already coming towards him. He can't do a whole lot. And so this little piddler of a ball that just rolls like perfectly into, I think it was Strizzolo, I think was the guy that scored the goal. Mm-hmm. He was just like there, and it wasn't like some wonderful positioning thing. It just, the ball landed at his feet, and he kind of kicked the crap out of it, and Martinez didn't really have a chance to react.
No, exactly. Like some people were talking about, even in our chat. By the way, let me readdress that with respect to some sort of like an advertising so we have a chat called We Are Genoa. Yeah. If you're interested, let us know, and we'll definitely add you. We had already some new joiners, so you're more than welcome if you want to join. Mm-hmm. Anyways, remember we were talking about it. I think it was with our friend Hans, that in his opinion, Martinez should have come out. But at the same time, I was saying to him, yes, but the rule of thumb is when you have like this sort of, it was almost like a counterattack, and it was coming down from Martinez's right, so the left if you go on the attacking side.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do, really, right? So if you go towards the ball and the striker is able to give it somewhere else, you have an entire empty net.
Yeah.
But I do see also the other point where if you did go closer to the ball, you probably had better coverage of the goal itself.
I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, hindsight's 2020. For me, it's one of those plays as a keeper. What you're seeing in front of you is you've got Bonnie who's covering this guy, and then you've got another guy to the right of him. And if you're committing at the moment before you see this guy falling down, you put yourself completely at risk for like a 2-on-1 tap in type of a goal, because you're going at this guy and he just lays it off quickly. He falls down so fast and the ball's right there. And I don't think anybody can really pick up quickly enough to realize what the hell's happening before the ball's in the back of the net. And that was unfortunately what happened to us. And so, like, ideally, yeah, he would have been out for faster and closing that ball out faster. But like, you're not going to imagine that this guy's going to fall down and completely miskick the ball. And it was totally, he just fell down. It wasn't like Bonnie pulled him or anything. Bonnie, even, you can see on the replay look on his face, he's like, what is happening right now? Like, did he just like slip? Like, what is going on? And you know, instead of it being a wildly hit ball, he almost got like no purchase on the ball at all. So it did continue moving forward and found its way straightly to Strizzolo. And so all of a sudden we go into halftime kind of not with our heads down, but a little bit, because it didn't. I said earlier that a draw was probably a fair result. I think in the end, I still believe that. But you know, you would look at this match in the first 45 minutes, and with us getting that early lead, you know, you'd really think we'd be going into halftime in that same position, especially with how our defense has typically been. So it was a little bit of a letdown to see that happen.
Actually, what I was describing was probably the goal that we had against Parma. So I kind of got mixed up with the two goals.
On the left and the right. Yeah. This one was a little bit more straight in front of goal, but it's the same type of thing. Like in a way, you know, maybe if he somehow figures this thing out and comes out, he puts pressure, because at the end of the day, like, I'm not sure Strizzolo had a chance to really aim the ball. It just was there, and he had to do something with it. But you're
right. Essentially, no, I'm kind of seeing it right now. It comes from the send.
Tremolata maybe was the guy.
2/3. Then he gets it on. He passes it. No, he's trying to pass it, but then he kind of falls. Obviously, he's not falling because he's fouled, in my opinion, though, right?
Yeah.
And then luckily, he's looking for the penalty. The ball just gets to Strizzola, and covered by 3 players. So that's why I'm thinking also Martinez. Well, I don't think Martinez should have or could have come out, because there's so many defenders. There's no point for him to go out, right? But there's like 3 defenders, Bocci, Draguzin, and Bani, I'm going to say. Sabelli, sorry. Yeah, Bani was right beside him.
The first,
And they're kind of covering the ball too. So once Strizzola like kicks it, it's a little bit too late for Martinez to see the whole. Besides, he was like very close. He's almost basically at the same distance of a penalty goal.
It's a really difficult ball to deal with, I think. Because like it's when this happens, I think what really had us misdirected is that lobbed ball coming into the box. You had everyone coming in and reacting. We weren't kind of like all keeping the line, so to speak, and staying where we were. There was a lot of kind of reactive movement towards that ball coming in, and it caused a lot of confusion. And the fact that this guy falls down on top of that, it causes even more, because you know, you kind of aren't even really seeing what the hell's happening, and you don't have a guy in position to react to that ball in that way. It's just not something that you expect to happen. And so because you've got that kind of combination of guys kind of running backwards and readjusting and trying to find their feet, and you can kind of see at the end there, like Sabelli's not quite close enough to the ball to make a difference, and you sort of see this thing happening. I think it was I don't want to call it a completely lucky goal, but I think it's one of those ones that.
So honestly, that was a pure disorganization on the lines.
Yeah, it was disorganization, and you have this guy fall down, and you've got
which confused them too, right?
Right, and you've got obviously Strizzolo basically unmarked is how he ended up kind of letting that ball go. So
yeah. So on then I guess after that, nothing really much happens other than that second goal that they had. So again, that was very unlucky from our side. Well, before, I can't remember now if it happened before or after. There was a post, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from Aramu, but I definitely remember the crossbar.
No, he did. Yep, Aramu had. I think it was a
from
really well hit free kick, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he had an excellent chance. But you're right, there wasn't a ton in it between those moments, and I think the free kick when Modena go up is another one that I feel like we're a little bit it's just a difficult ball, you know. It's a low swinging kind of cross that's played in. It has a kind of a nice little pace to it as well. And ultimately it finds Puskas, who's just trying to put the ball out of play and isn't able to react to it quickly in time. I think if it's any player on the Genoa team that Modena would have wanted to have to make a decision with the ball, it's probably Puskas, because he's not in this position to defend crosses all that often. And so he ends up putting it in the back of the net. And again, obviously nothing that Martinez could have done.
Oh no, he's totally. He couldn't have done anything.
This is part of football, you know. This is it's a foul in a dangerous place, and with the person that can put the ball in a dangerous area, you kind of just are waiting for something to happen, and that's exactly what happened in this moment. Even though it was an own goal, I don't think it was a disastrous own goal by any means.
No, I think everybody missed it, and it just accidentally happened to touch his knee. Essentially, that's what happened.
He was trying to do something with it and get it out of play, and he just wasn't able to react quickly enough to it, and that's what it was. But it was also a very difficult ball to deal with. So
yeah. So I can't give them him. I mean, obviously it's something that you get angry about, but you can't really fault him for that, let's say.
No, I agree. I think there's no way you can look at this and say, man, Puskas really had a horror show there. I think it just was. It was a well played ball, and I think that the next big moment from this in the match, if I'm not mistaken, was when Modena are sent down to 10 men. I think that happened before Aramu's chance, if I'm not.
So yeah, you're right. So Aramu's chance happened towards the end. Yeah, we had about 25, 30 minutes, as you said, with one man up.
Yeah.
Or Modena with one man down. But then Genoa kind of woke up after that kind of limbo where they felt that 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
So they were not, for some reason in this match, I didn't see that, as we say in Italian, mordente, which means like that want to fight, that wanting to fight, that wanting. So there was, but not like with that anger and enthusiasm or stamina or something. Some changes did make a difference, but it was not incisive enough up until that red card, which kind of like woke him up. And I think also Aramu woke up too, because up until that point, I was like, you know what? This guy's going to be benched forever and shut up, essentially. No, seriously, because I was getting angry again, saying, this was his match to wake up, and he was falling apart essentially once again.
Yeah.
But after this red card, I saw him totally waking up drastically.
And I do want to talk. I mean, I think it's a shame, honestly, that move ended with a red card. And Goodmanson had a couple of moves like this. He had, I think the play came a little bit out of nowhere. It was just this crazy long ball from Sabelli. I think he finds Goodmanson, and Goodmanson does his best like Bergkamp impression where he just like takes the ball off of one foot and kind of turns around and plays it to himself on the other. And all of a sudden he's completely in on a goal. Like there's no question. This is a one-on-one situation. And there's a Modena player right kind of in vicinity, and he just basically decides him down and says, you're not going to have this chance. Immediately is shown the red card. I think it's totally the right decision.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question about it.
This touch from Goodmanson when he gets the ball is just fantastic. He takes the player completely out of the play, and that's what creates that 1v1, and that's ultimately where it creates the clear goal-scoring chance, and why he's taken down. And he had a couple of moments like this with that movement. There were a couple of balls that were played into him, I think mainly at the top of the box where he kind of had turned and done a similar thing. So it's lovely to see that from him. But you're right. At this point, I think we're all thinking, hopefully we're gonna get something out of this match in more than just a point. We've got a numerical advantage. I would have loved to have seen this move in its kind of final moment, because I think it would have been one of the best goals of Serie B had he converted it.
Yeah.
But it kind of is what it is, and unfortunately, to your point, this is kind of why I believe in the end, can you say Genoa were a better side? You definitely can say that. But I kind of think we deserve, in a way, a draw, because even though we did pile some of that pressure late on, I'm with you. It didn't feel like we were just banging on the door all the time at the end of the match. We had some good chances, don't get me wrong. But with a numerical advantage, you kind of would think we're maybe getting a little bit more out of it than we did in this game, to be honest. But I do agree with you on Aramu as well. I think Aramu looked a lot more lively with that kind of 11v10 scenario.
Right. So then, as we said it before, but he got that crossbar that soon after that, the red card. Then Coda come in, made a huge difference.
Yes.
Everyone is continuously now is definitely saying everybody was against him before, but Coda definitely, we need him to be a starting 11.
I think so. The 11. When you looked at the start of the match, I think the places where many Genoa fans might have questions is you have Puskás starting instead of Coda, which, in some cases we've welcomed that. I know there have been sometimes questions of why not Strootman in the starting lineup, but I think kind of the three that we're choosing more consistently now with Frenda, Badal, and Storaro kind of makes sense together. They can play well off of each other, I think.
I think so too. We're still missing that playmaker, but nevertheless,
yes. And that's evident. You see that in each of these matches. And to your point, we kind of just don't have one.
Yeah. Ideally, I think we would love to see that diamond. Badal, your defensive midfielder, and then you get the playmaker, which is the front one, and then the two laterals, which would be technically Sturaro and Frendrup, right? But we're missing that playmaker, hence that's why we have that. But you don't have the right players. We don't have the right players for the two strikers, because Puskás and Coda, most of the time, have we seen in different matches, are kind of overlapping one against the other one too, right? So it's almost like, okay, sometimes it's good to have them in the final minutes, though, not from the get-go. Actually, let's hear first the audio for the actual second goal.
Over to the back post and turned home by Mattia Bani. A striker's finish from the centre-back, lurking at the back post.
So this was the audio for the goal. What do you want to say about it? How did you live it?
I just it's amazing. I know we've all been wanting Bani to score for months now, at least, if not longer than that. And it was his first goal, of course, for the club. I just love, if you were to not watch this match and look at the box score and see Bani on the score sheet, I think you'd assume it was a corner or something. I love that he scores this goal, doing his best number 9 impressions, just left
absolutely
the box, and he one times it off of a volley too. It's just fantastic. The fact that this happens, and you talked earlier about, Coda has to be in the starting 11. And this is the part for me that I never thought that we would see. I didn't expect this from Coda when we signed him, but I almost feel like for us this season, he's been more effective this way even than his goal scoring opportunities. And this is kind of a wonderful ball that he plays in. He catches it, and similarly, he has kind of this. He just hoofs it across the box essentially, and he finds Bonnie perfectly, in a really well placed assist. It's a difficult ball for both of them to deal with. It was
absolutely, yes. Like if you have to think about it, a defender going in midair and kicking with the ball with the with the internal side of his foot without making it go up to the stars as most players would do.
Right.
It's quite a type of an athletic type of approach that you would not expect, as I said, like from a defender.
Yeah, I mean, to see Bonnie control the ball, and for Coda to be able to kind of lift it and find him too. I mean, to your point, Bonnie actually had a little bit to do when he was on the end of that. It wasn't like a perfectly hit thing. Like he kind of had to position himself well. But I just thought that entire move was great, and kind of the shoulder turn that Coda had to find Bonnie and to make that pass, and just to see it happen. It's relief, obviously, that we are at least getting a point out of the match, making sure if anything happens, we're getting a point. It kind of definitely felt like at that point we're not losing this match. And obviously it's an excitement that Bonnie scores it, and to see him score that way I thought it was phenomenal. So
personally, I know he has made some mistakes in the match. When we also do our weekly recap of the man of the match with the Genoa Si Resta group and whatnot, which is the larger group. But nevertheless, even though Gudmundsson was the one that came out, I didn't feel that Gudmundsson was worthy of it, because similar to Aramo, he kind of woke up at the end of the match, in my opinion. That's what I saw anyways. But while Bani, except that one or two mini mistakes that perhaps did also lead to the goal, I don't think they're entirely his fault.
No, I agree with that. I don't think they are.
I think personally, I think Bani was hands down the man of the match, also based on the fact of giving him this goal, which he had in his foot for the longest. He's been trying forever.
Well, I mean, how many were ruled offside or something else?
Yeah.
I think you have to give it to Bonnie. That's the right answer for me. I mean, you could say Dragusin. I think maybe Dragusin had a little bit of a better defensive game or something, but like, come on, it's Bonnie's first goal. It was the goal that ended up getting us a point out of the match. It was a pretty damn well taken goal. And he wasn't in a slouch defensively himself too, as you say. So I think it has to be Bonnie as the man of the match for this one, personally.
Absolutely. I'm glad we're actually on sync with that one.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we saw match day 25, as you were mentioning a little bit before. We were the last ones to play on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw that all the big ones actually had tied or actually lost.
Yes.
So that we came into the match a little bit on a different side of expectations. And that's perhaps why you get a lot of people that were actually upset. And therefore, by having that, our tie kind of, even though it was a good thing to gain that 1 pointer, based on how the match was going and based on the quality or style of play that the team, which is Modena, has.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, I guess a little bit of anger came for the fact that, as you said before, even Frosinone had tied. Actually, let's do a quick recap of all the matches. So the first one that starts on Friday was Pisa Venezia, which even they are quite, well, no, not anymore. Well, they're still on the 7th spot right now, but they tied at home against Venezia, so that was a 1-1. Then on the Saturday we have the majority of the matches, so it opens with Palermo Frosinone, so that's the biggest one,
mm-hmm.
where we were hoping for a hiccup from Frosinone side playing.
And we got Palermo. A little bit of one.
They did. So it was a nice 1-1. Even though I didn't watch the match, even though I heard that the match was quite balanced, but there was also a very strong Frosinone side that, we usually hear the fact that Frosinone are a little bit lucky on the side, but apparently in this match, it was both strong teams. So it's not that Palermo was not worthy for it, but apparently also Frosinone. So basically it's Frosinone that deserved the tie rather than Palermo winning. After that, we have Cosenza Südtirol. I spoke a little bit with our friend Raffaello, which we'll be having as a guest quite soon, actually, because we're going to be facing Cosenza soon. He's a little bit disappointed. While I was applauding the tie against this crazy horse Frosinone, he was a little bit upset because he said, well, that was our chance to start to get some more points. But I was kind of going back to also what he was saying and others that we have had as guests, where every point counts. And even though they were playing at home, even though Südtirol had a red card and Cosenza had a penalty that they missed, the result at the end was a 0-0. After that, we have Benevento Brescia. Unfortunately for Brescia, they are in a total free fall.
Unbelievable. Honestly, I would not have pegged them to be where they are right now.
Like you do for sure too, but I remember then when they were second at par, I think with Regina, while Frosinone was like a few points above them, and Brescia was just right up there. But if you're looking at their form, I'm not going to even go beyond the last 5 matches. It's a strikeout, like a 5 strikeout, which is insane. It's like a total, I don't know. Besides Cellino, which is the owner of Brescia, that is a crazy horse, similar to what our Preziosi was. He's already so he sacked the coach. He got a replacement. He sacked that one already. Now we're at the third one, which I think is from the Primavera or something like that. But nevertheless, it's just like I think they're going to go down. Unfortunately, if they're not going to get their head together, most likely they're the first team I can see for sure going down.
It's a very brutal run of form they've been on, to your point, and I think they've actually lost 8 of their last 10 matches that they've played, and in at least 3 of those they've had red cards. In one match they had 2 red cards. So you're seeing a lot of probably turnover on the side because you're getting players that are getting banned. And as you've mentioned, like, they've gone from being in the automatic qualification spot, which they were at the beginning of the season, to really being in the dogfight of just staying up in the lead right now. So it's kind of incredible what you're seeing right there.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel for them. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Next match, big match, Bari Cagliari. That was quite of a match. Lapadula scores, red card for Cagliari, and on the 95th minute, I think, or anyways, in injury time, Bari was able to tie. So that was a tough one, I'm sure. But from a standings perspective, Cagliari keeps Cagliari still low, because I still fear Cagliari to be a team that, like, if they had won, they would have been at 38.
38. So
they would have been like still at the same position, but catching up with the I don't know if you want to call it the group of 4 with us included, or the group of 3 between the 3rd and the 5th spot. Yeah. But right now they're still keeping that gap with Regina, which is 3 points. Nevertheless, the next match after that was, again, so going back to Regina, this was another expectation or fear or match that we had eyes on. Cittadella, from our friend Jake, was losing actually 2-0 at the end of the first half. Then magic happened. Red card for Regina. 1, 2, 3. Cittadella comes out winning victoriously at home against a very strong Regina side.
Massive result.
Absolutely. So that takes Regina to their 4th straight loss.
Yeah.
And they've been dropping points like, I don't know, grapes. Is that what the expression is? and essentially right now they're sitting on the 5th spot. And that's now because of our 1-point penalty, whatever, but 4 points below us. Then after that, we have SPAL Como, which ended 1-1. So with the new, which is going to be our next match again, the next opponent is going to be SPAL. We'll talk about them shortly after that. But essentially that they tied at home against Como. So there is a little bit of a wake-up aspect after De Rossi was sent off. Parma Ascoli, that was another interesting match. And guess what? When we were all thinking and believing that Parma would have won this one, what happens? Ascoli goes and wins at Parma. After we've seen that strong Super Parma, that comment from Buffon at the end from the press release and whatnot. And then what happens? They go and lose at home against Ascoli. Like, seriously?
Unbelievable. Well, but hopefully we're in the right rhythm right now because they do play Frosinone this coming week. So maybe we're seeing the Yo-Yo Parma in their right lull right now.
That's right. Maybe you're good point. So, okay, lose against Ascoli, so next time you're going to wake up. I get that. Okay, good.
That's our hope.
Then there was a super derby from Umbria.
Ooh.
So Perugia against Ternana, great expectations. Let I remind you, where was Perugia just 5 matches ago? And look at where they're sitting right now. So essentially,
I love it.
They were last, like almost to the point of, given that they were falling down to Serie C, now they're sitting on the 14th spot after a win against, as I was saying, against Ternana for 3-0. So that was a clear win. And from the last spot, now they're on the 14th spot with 29 points, which is only, by the way, 6 points.
6 points from last.
Which is Cosenza, right? Then obviously there was Modena Genoa with the 2-2, which consolidates Genoa to the second spot, clear to the third of 3 points, which is the duo Bari Südtirol. What do you think is more dangerous, Bari or Südtirol? I mean, I know the answer.
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. Bari have, I think, the more complete side. They have a lot more attacking options and everything else. But Südtirol have been a constant, really, this whole season. They've just continued to get results in their form. I mean, both teams are on decent but not amazing runs of form right now. I would probably still be a little bit more afraid to play Bari, but you never know. I mean, Südtirol have not been afraid of anyone, and that's probably even more scary than that kind of type of a thing. I think it's been remarkable too, by the way, that in the top 11 places, every single team drew or lost in this match week.
That's right.
So you had a huge amount of opportunity potentially for some teams in that kind of bracket to move up a little bit. There are a lot of teams, Ternana you talked about on 11th. They're on 34 points. Had they had won that match, they would have been right behind Modena.
Exactly.
Crazy. Yeah.
Crazy. Exactly. That's so true. Nobody took advantage of that, us included, right? But I know we don't have like a fan friendship with Perugia, but just the fact that their fellow Grifone and Ternana are friends of the other guys, I'm happy to see that result be what it was. Oh yeah, like I don't think there's a gemellaggio. I think there's some sort of, I don't know about a friendship or not, but definitely there is no hatred with Perugia. Yeah. Definitely for the fact of sharing the fact that their logo is like ours, like the same animal or mythical animal or whatnot. It makes them feel friendly or like, buddies or something like that, right?
You can relate a little bit, I guess.
Definitely having them win against Ternana, which we know they're friends with the bikers, the ciclisti de Rumente, as we say in Genova. It just made me happy, actually. I mean, mind you, Ternana this year is quite strong compared to other seasons.
I mean, they beat us earlier this year.
Exactly. I mean, it was under a difficult spell that we were going on, but nevertheless. Having said that, let's move on and look towards the next match day. So next match day is going to be a little bit more complicated.
Yeah,
I think so. I'm just going to do a quick run of the next matches, and then we can talk about our match.
Okay.
So the first one we're going to see, which we're recording on Wednesday, so hopefully we'll air on Thursday. So the first match tomorrow, if you're listening to us on Thursday, is Pisa Perugia. So Pisa has an opportunity here to catch a little bit of momentum, while Perugia is on a good streak. So it seems that it's going to be quite an interesting match.
Mm-hmm.
Venezia, which has another yo-yo team against another yo-yo team of Cagliari, is going to be playing against each other on Saturday. So that's going to be...
Before you get to the other Fabry,
yeah.
I think Frosinone and Parma actually are also playing that same Friday as well. So we'll have a little bit of...
Oh, shoot, I missed that. Sorry, I was looking on the left line and it's on the right. You're right. So, God, tomorrow, Frosinone Parma. So, to your point, to what we just said before, Parma, you're a yo-yo. Now it's your turn to be on the upside.
The unlikely instance of us being Parma fans will definitely happen on Friday.
For once.
Yes.
Sorry, you're right. My bad. That was also another match on Friday. Saturday, so I just mentioned the Venezia Cagliari. Then we have Südtirol Palermo. That's another quite interesting match against two sides that are quite strong, being Südtirol on the 4th, Palermo sitting on the 9th, which I still think that they are a good side and they still have a lot to show.
Yeah.
Como Cosenza. That I'm sorry for Como because I beautiful city and whatnot, but we have to root for our friends Rosso Blu from down in the boot. That with our friend Raffaello and so on, that they need some points, and that is another opportunity for them to get some more points. Ternana Cittadella, that's going to be quite a feisty match, I believe. Ternana is going to play at home. Cittadella, after the win against Regina, has a little bit of a stronger side. So they're sitting a little bit better compared to a few matches ago. Brescia Bari, God, I don't know what to say. If you look at the form, Bari is going to win without any doubt. But is there going to be a revolution in Brescia? I don't know. Hard to say. At this point, doesn't seem like, but everything could happen technically.
Right.
Regina Modena, that's another one that is going to be interesting. So we just had Modena. So Regina is on a streak of playing against the big ones. Regina, after the bad defeat they had with Cittadella, they're definitely going to try to recoup what they had lost, even though they are on a bad streak, as I was saying. But if you look at the match against Cittadella, it's strange that they are on a bad spell. Then on last match for Saturday, which is good for us because it's going to be at 10:15 rather than 8 a.m. It's going to be Genoa SPAL. So we'll talk about that in a second. So let me just close the match day 26 with on Sunday, it's going to be Ascoli Benevento. So we have two sides that are kind of like tough teams as well. Benevento, which was like this big disappointment of last year, had a win last match, while Ascoli had that win that was probably one of the few wins that we saw from last match day, leading them to this 12th spot. So what to say about Genoa SPAL? What do you think?
Well, it's
what are we getting ourselves into?
It's sort of a strange one to prep ourselves for. I mean, SPAL have not been on the best run of form. Obviously, they had probably I'm not sure this is exactly right, but at least in terms of star power, I think they probably had the signing of the January transfer window by signing Raja Nangalan, former Roma player, of course, to the squad. And it'll be an interesting one to see how they turn out in this one. They've had some maybe matches that are closer than they should be. They've lost the matches that they have lost in the last 5 have been only by a goal. That match they lost against Bari, they came back, I think, down from basically being 4-1 to almost kind of leveling it off, and really scored all the goals when
that was the first match with Nangolan.
That was the first one, and he came on about like 60 minutes through or something, and then all of a sudden they scored 3 goals. So it's this kind of this crazy thing. But
let me add one thing. Matteo, which by the way, he says hello to everyone. Essentially asked me one question. is Nainggolan going to be still motivated to be playing for SPAL after having De Rossi being sent off? Because he essentially accepted SPAL because of De Rossi.
It's a fair question. I mean, he's going to have to I would think that he would maybe almost be more motivated, but this is its own take. Everyone can have their own opinion on this. If you believe that Nainggolan and De Rossi being in the trenches for as long as they were, have each other's backs in that type of a way, yeah, they're not playing for Roma right now, but they're still on the same team. And I think if you're looking at it like De Rossi's not showing up, he's not going to be there right now.
He's not going to be there anymore.
I got to up my game. Yeah, well, him being sacked completely, I think, is kind of a crazy thing. So it might work out negatively for them. It might be something where you've got this guy, he's in.
Well, negatively for Nainggolan, because the team doesn't really care. I mean, for Nainggolan.
I think for SPAL, it's a disaster if you have Nainggolan in the lineup and he is completely
uninterested.
Because all of a sudden, like, you have the guy who is easily the most talented player on that team. Like, I don't mean any disrespect to the rest of
no, of course not.
SPAL's lineup, but like if you bring in Nainggolan and he's all of a sudden just not interested at all in what's going on, then you've got a massive distraction that's going on. So I don't know. I think it's a real risk. I don't think it's a bad shout at all from Matteo in terms of whether or not, this maybe actually works in our favor. So
it could. Actually, what do you think now? So about what could be the potential turnout of that match?
I think.
What's your analysis?
I think for us, I think we have a decent opportunity. So SPAL have not been the best at being airtight defensively. They, again, as I mentioned, they have lost some closer matches. I think they are in a little bit of a weird way. I mean, to be fair, I think the counterpoint to, well, what do you think Nainggolan is going to respond to in terms of, De Rossi being sacked? I think he had a decent enough game in the first game after that at the last match week. He didn't have a goal, but he had a pretty decent rating and played fairly well. So I don't know if it completely tanks Nainggolan's form. If it does, obviously that's a great thing for us. I think that Genoa should have a decent opportunity here. I am interested in how kind of we end up lining up our team. I think we're probably going to continue with the 4-3-3 type formation that we've had recently. I think you can maybe argue if it's a 4-4-3-3 or a 4-3-2-1. But for me, I think that Genoa could get something out of this match. Of course, all of our fellow Rosso Blue fans will be thinking the same. I believe it might end 2-1 to Genoa. I think we'll have an opportunity kind of. I do agree with you. I am expecting Coda to start in this match. And as per usual, if he's starting, I'm also expecting him to be on the score sheet. And I think that we're going to see him do that. I think we might see the first goal from Dragush, maybe coming on as a substitute later in the match. But for me, I mean, this is a team. SPAL are I still think they're a difficult team to evaluate. So they're sitting in the relegation places right now. They're 18th place. They're level on points with Brescia, who have had a horrendous run of form. They're only 2 points ahead of Cosenza. So obviously, Raffaello is really rooting for us in this match to get the win. We've seen before that playing teams at the bottom of the table doesn't mean it's a cakewalk. We're not going to see necessarily, oh, this is an easy match for us to overpower SPAL. And I do think it's a difficult game to evaluate for that reason, because SPAL don't have, terrible players. There are some other guys like Mancini potentially could give us some trouble as well. He's one of their forwards. There's some other guys on that side that could be challenging for us, but I'm expecting a 2-1 victory for Genoa. I think we can get it done. And as you mentioned before, I think maybe there's a little bit of unrest again with De Rossi being out of the lineup entirely and sacked by the club, and a new manager coming in. This one we're playing as well at home, I believe, right? At the Ferraris, if I'm not mistaken. So
That's correct.
For a new manager to come into that position, it may be a little bit of a tall task.
So 2-1, you're saying?
Yeah.
So on the score sheet, you said Skoda and Dragus.
Yeah.
And so are you saying that we're going to score first, they're going to tie, and then we're going to score?
Yeah.
Or are we going to have two
I think we're going to get even with Dragus scoring as a substitute, I think we're going to be relatively comfortable. And we might see a late goal from SPAL. But again, I don't think this is going to be a quote unquote easy match. Remember the last time we played them, I think we were not in a terrible run of form previously. We had only beaten them 1-0. Granted, it was an away match. But it was similarly kind of a fairly challenging battle for us at that time.
On my side, I was trying to analyze also their module. They have been changing throughout the season. Earlier on, I saw like a 3-4-2-1 or a 3-5-2 often. So that seems the more common one, or 3-4-1-2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I'm going to go back to our when we talked about that episode when we had Anthony with Palermo.
Yep.
That I think that if they have this quote unquote 3-5-2, however you're going to slice it, I think with our 4-3-2-1, or because as a player we have or 4-3-3,
mm-hmm.
I think we can have that edge against them. I think also that with respects to their form, it's kind of telling us that they are in a tough situation. The De Rossi thing definitely has shaken them, even though there is a little bit more of time from the new coach to prep them a little bit better. Nainggolan, I'm hoping, that's why I raised that question to you, that he's not superly motivated. So it's just going to be like a mediocre, maybe some exploits here and there, but mediocre type of performance, because he definitely is that player that can make a difference. But we're playing at home. Their form away, except and this was like under De Rossi though, and pre-Nainggolan, we did see a couple of wins that were quite incredible against Parma, against Regina.
That's right.
But having said that, we've also seen that both of them, Regina on a down spell, was almost at the beginning of the down spell, I guess after our loss against us or something like that, or we're not Parma. We know it's a yo-yo team, so they're reading also their comments and our friends that we've spoken to in different pods. They're just saying we have nothing to add to the fact that sometimes it's a great team and sometimes it's just like whatever team.
Yeah.
Anyways, so having said that, going on our analysis on the first side of the pod, I think that we're going to see a very narrow margin, similar to yours, but I'm going to say that it's going to be a 1-0 this time.
Okay.
1-0 win for Genoa. I think it's going to be a tough match. I think we're going to be scoring perhaps in the first half and trying to maintain it and suffer all the way to the end, or halfway through. I don't think it's going to be at the end because it's going to just increase more and more and more the nervousness of the players, and we might actually lose out on the opportunity to win if we keep it towards the end with too much nerve-wracking, even though we do have the quality and the talent to not have that get to us too much. But when you get it to the last 10 minutes, it gets very dangerous if you do it that way.
It does.
So having said that, before we wrap up this episode, our friend Raffaello did share with me quite an interesting article. I know we don't necessarily like to talk too much about other teams and their situations and whatnot, as we haven't talked too much about Sampdoria.
Mm-hmm.
But he shared with me quite an interesting article where the general director from Brescia had an interview, and they were in his interview. One question that came to him was with respect to Regina. So he essentially, his words were, Regina have not been paying taxes. Remember that we talked that time, one or two episodes ago, where Genoa and Regina are both in the situation of this tax for different reasons, but they're both having this tax issue.
Yeah.
So he's saying Regina has not been paying taxes since March. So that means a whole year. I don't remember how often, but I think it's every quarter that they have to pay something.
Wow.
But they have been paying only the wages. According to us, in our opinion, like Brescia and other clubs, Regina should be excluded by this championship.
Wow.
I don't think there are reasons for that, but,
well,
we'll get to that. Let me just finish his comments. And he says, these things don't happen on our side, but perhaps, I'm just reading it from Italian, sorry. Perhaps that there were errors that have been made, but we all pay for those errors. So I guess his point is, you can make errors, you can make mistakes, but eventually, one way or another, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Genoa, we went into we had a deal with the tax people and whatnot, and also with the tribunal, in order to get only 1 point penalty, as there was that mistake, even when if it was not done purposely. Here, it's a little bit different. I hear that they're trying to get some agreement and whatnot. I don't know how it works, but the only thing I heard was at the bare minimum 2 points, and that's why we got the 1, because we cut the deal.
Mm-hmm.
But according to this gentleman here, is in his opinion, I don't know if there are the extreme, the conditions for it to happen, but in his opinion, Regina should be excluded by the championship based on the fact that they haven't been paying taxes for a whole entire year. Mind you, that they were almost barely bankrupt before the enrollment for this season.
Right before this season, that they were very much in that risk. I mean, it's obviously it's hard for us to really be saying a whole lot because we're in a similar position right now, of course, but it would be a pretty remarkable thing to happen if they were actually kind of excluded from the rest of the competition. Obviously, they've been one of the better teams this season. They've been in a pretty poor run of form lately, as we talked about earlier, but it would be very interesting. I don't think I can necessarily advocate for it, but at the same time, not paying taxes for effectively a full calendar year doesn't seem like just a mistake. It seems like maybe an intentional mistake done at least 4 times.
That's my point. If it's on a quarterly basis, that's at least 4 times, and so, that should be, they should pay. I mean, if that is true, which this is fact. These are facts. There has to be a repercussion.
Yeah,
essentially, that's my point is.
You got to definitely back pay all of that stuff, and then maybe there's other things happening, but it changes. There's something to this too as well, like from an actual club competition standpoint. It's a quote unquote financial doping type of a situation where you have a team that is not choosing to outlay funds and in concept using those funds for other purposes that they could be using for the competitiveness of their team or whatever. If Genoa didn't need to pay taxes, that'd be great. We don't have to pay taxes on the Ferraris and all these other places. Well, I guess we're getting that through the city of Genova, I think. But still on all the other kind of items that we're responsible for. So that's why I think it's being raised as hey, if they're doing this, they should be excluded or they should be severely punished.
Yeah, it's like, why are we all paying it and not them?
Right. But, I guess we'll see what the courts end up ruling.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a little bit more difficult. I think the Genoa one was a little bit easier for ruling perspective. We'll see what happens with that whenever that happens. But so match day is on Saturday. and we have our predictions. Let's just keep our fingers crossed and hopefully have a great match. That's all I care for.
That's it. We just want to see that result.
So thank you again, everyone, for listening to us, having the patience to go through our episode. But nevertheless, you can always follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Drop us comments, likes, and whatnot. Give us comments and whatnot, and make sure to drop send us a message, DM us with respects if you want to be added to the We Are Genoa chat that we have going on WhatsApp. And let's go and watch this amazing match for our Grifone. And never forget, always and only, Forza Genoa. You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.